Hello, everybody. My name is Stephen Monroy, and I'm a civil rights attorney. It's my pleasure to be here and for a Know Your Rights session. I want to thank the library for putting on this presentation, and I will pass it to my colleague.
Buenas tardes, yo soy Julia Pérez con Centro de Información. I am Julia Pérez with Centro de Información here in Elgin, and here to discuss and talk about knowing your rights.
So we have a presentation. Tenemos una presentación para ustedes y también tenemos información hoy en persona. Y we have a presentation that we're going to show to everybody, and then we also have some information for individuals that would like to have the packets and materials. All the information that we're going to describe in this session is also going to be available through the library on their website. So if you would like to get more information, please refer to those resources and you reach out to the library because we're going to have all that posted. Toda la información que vamos a hablar hoy también está accesible por la librería en línea.
Vamos a empezar. Yo me voy a mover un poquito, aquí me perdonan, ¿ok? So, knowing your rights. Esta es una presentación de conocer tus derechos. Estos son derechos que todos en este país tenemos. These are rights that we all in this country have, regardless of legal status, regardless of immigration status. Every human in the United States has these rights. We want to start with the Illinois Trust Act. The Illinois Trust Act is an act that was passed in the state of Illinois that prohibits state police or municipal police, municipal or Illinois law enforcement from participating or assisting ICE in any type of immigration enforcement operations. This does not, however, this also means both sides, right? It means that they cannot assist ICE, nor can they assist detainees or interfere in any way in any type of ICE operations. They also cannot transfer people to ICE or transfer information that they may have during an arrest, for example, to ICE. So these are our rights, our U.S. Constitution rights, that everyone in the United States has basic rights regardless of immigration status. This is important just to, as a bird's eye view of who manages what and what departments are managed by whom. So the U.S. Department of Homeland Security is in charge of the USCIS, or U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, U.S. Border Patrol, and ICE. Whereas the Department of Justice is more the judicial side of ICE and immigration enforcement. That includes judges, courts, and appeals. This slide used to be a little bit more helpful early on, okay? Not so much, quite as much anymore, but I still keep this slide in our presentation because it helps you identify which office, which badge belongs to which office. But more than that, I've kept this slide in the presentation because it's an opportunity for me to just remind everybody that we're very lucky that we live in this state, and especially here in Elgin, because our Elgin police, especially in our municipal, our local police, are very willing to identify themselves. So if we are stopped by, in a traffic stop or in any fashion by a local police, they will disclose who they are. They will identify themselves with their names, their badge numbers, and the offices that they represent. Not so much when it's ICE right now. So that's a good way to differentiate who you're talking to. Is if you ask what your badge number is and they provide it, it's probably local police.
Thank you so much. And a lot of these, all of these rights that we're going to be describing today involve all these levels of law enforcement, all the police. So regardless of who you're interacting with, whether it's a local law enforcement, whether it's state police, whether it's somebody from ICE or from Customs and Border Protection or the FBI or county, these are your constitutional rights that we're going to be describing that affect all levels of government.
Okay, so estas badges, help me out, badges. Las placas. Estas placas identifican cuál oficina o de cuál departamento es representado por ese oficial. Entonces, lo importante de saber de aquí es que el Trust Act autoriza, o sea, que no autoriza a cualquier departamento de policía, ya sea estatal, del condado, el municipio, del pueblo. Los policías no pueden participar, ni ayudar, ni asistir de alguna manera, de cualquier manera, con ICE. Y lo bueno también es que las policías del estado, las policías del municipio o de las ciudades están muy dispuestos a identificarse. So, si ustedes están parados o le para un policía, lo detiene un policía y usted le pide que se identifique, siempre un policía del municipio o del estado se va a identificar. Los que no se están identificando fácilmente o voluntariamente son los de ICE. Next. So tenemos derechos, we have rights. So you have the right to be safe in your own home, you have the right to remain silent, and you have the right to be represented or to speak to an attorney. These are basic rights regardless of immigration status. So, los chalecos que dicen policía, que se identifican como policía, hemos verificado que ICE también tiene el derecho de usar estos chalecos. So, ya no necesariamente tienen que decir ICE nada más, pueden decir policía porque están representando law enforcement. They're representing law enforcement, and therefore they are also allowed to wear vests that say police on them. So what to do if ICE approaches you is, number one is you have the right to remain silent, so remain silent. You do have to tell police your name. You do have to identify yourself with your name. However, anything else you do not have to disclose. You do want to tell the police over and over again, or the agent, the officer that's approaching you, that you want to remain silent. That's something that you need to repeat, and also that you would like to speak to your attorney. We ask our neighbors and our community to always carry valid documents. So do not have an expired driver's license. Do not have an expired ID. That isn't helpful. You do not have to have legal status or documented status in order to carry a driver's license in Illinois, because a driver's license in Illinois is not intended to justify or to verify citizenship. It is only for identification purposes. We ask also for our neighbors to carry, like I said, government-issued ID, and along with, or if you don't have an ID, to at least carry documentation that proves that you've been in this country for over 2 years, for 2 years or longer. And the reason for that is because that can help with expedited removal proceedings. So people that don't have proof that they have been in this country for 2 years or longer, they're put in a different line. They're put in an expedited line versus people that have been here for over 2 years. Do not carry false documents. Do not carry expired documents. Do not lie to law enforcement, because anything you say can and will be used against you. Do not sign any document that you do not understand, and do not discuss your status, your case, with anyone other than your attorney. So do not discuss your case with the person sitting next to you, the person that asks you, hey, where are you from? What's your story? I'm here for this. What are you here for? How did they get you? They got me this way. Do not engage in that conversation, because anything you say can and will be used against you. At home, todos tenemos el derecho de estar seguros en nuestras propias casas. We all have a right to be safe in our own homes. Y nadie tiene el derecho de entrar a su casa sino con why am I losing it? Con una orden judicial. Thank you. Si alguien les toca la puerta, if somebody knocks on your door, you do not open the door. So first and foremost, do not open the door. Not even a little crack, not even to peek to see who's on the other side of the door. You do not open the door. Instead, what you do is you ask for that person on the other side of the door to identify themselves. And of course, if they don't, and they demand for you to open the door, you ask if they have a warrant, a judicial warrant. If they say that they do, then you have them slip it under the door or put it up against the window so that you can review it, because there are key items on a judicial warrant that need to be there in order to validate it. So the first thing is to ask the officers or the agents if they have a warrant. If they say they have one, ask for them to slip it under the door. Si dicen que tienen el documento judicial, en la orden judicial, entonces pídenla que la muestren por la ventana o que la pasen por debajo de la puerta para poder revisarla bien. No debe de abrir la puerta bajo ninguna circunstancia. Una orden judicial es firmada por un juez. A judicial warrant is signed by a judge. It must have a signature by a judge. Okay? And only a judicial warrant allows for an agent or gives permission to an agent to enter a home or to enter a private area. Make sure that the warrant properly identifies the person that they are looking for. So the next slide, thank you. The next slide shows the difference between a judicial warrant on the left side and an administrative warrant on the right. So as you can see, a judicial warrant is going to be signed by a judge at the bottom. It's going to have a date. It's going to be dated and timed. And it also is going to specifically name the person that judicial warrant is for. So it's going to be very specific, to where an administrative warrant does not contain that information. Next. As you can see, a judge actually signs the judicial warrant and dates it. If these items are missing from a judicial warrant as well as the name, it is not valid. If the name is misspelled, it could also be rejected. If my name is Julia Perez and they're looking for somebody named Julia Rosas Perez, that's not me. So that is not a valid warrant. Did we go too many? Did you click for me? How about you just click for me? So administrative warrants, again, are not signed by a judge. These orders do not allow access into private areas. Okay? is the biggest thing. So somebody appearing with an administrative warrant does not have a right to go into your house. Okay, next. So in your car, we ask, please, please, please don't give anyone a reason, an official a reason to pull you over. Have a valid license plate. Make sure your license plate is not expired. Your stickers. Make sure there's no obstruction of view. Make sure you're obeying traffic laws, speed. Use your blinkers. Be on your best behavior when driving, and don't give anybody a reason to pull you over. Again, carry a driver's license, a valid state ID, and or your work permit if you have one. This one is especially important because just this week I heard of 2 different situations where clients were on their way to our office to receive services for renewal purposes, to renew their documentation, and they were pulled over on their way to Centro. Pulled over as a traffic stop, which ICE is not supposed to be doing traffic stops, but pulled them over on a traffic stop. They thought that they were getting pulled over by police. They were asked for their driver's license. They had their work permits because they especially were on their way to our office to renew their documentation. So, thankfully they had their work permits on them. But they were also asked about other people on the title of the car, or on the registration of the car. So they asked, who is this other person? Or you're this person, who's the other person? And where does that other person live? And how long has that person been here? So they'll ask more questions, and if you are willing to answer them, they'll gladly accept your information. So don't provide any more information than what you're asked. No, they're not driving police cars, but they many times, well, these people said they had lights, that they looked official, yeah. Next slide, please. Thank you. Is it okay if we show this video? Okay. Yes. So if you can click on this kind of highlights the importance of education and knowing your rights. So if you can click play on that.
Immigrant rights advocate prevented ICE officers from arresting 2 undocumented immigrants in his car. They pulled him over and showed him what they claimed was arrest paperwork.
Now, he pushed back, citing the Constitution. Listen to this.
Those are not warrants of arrest, sir.
Yes, they are, sir. Warrant of arrest of alien.
Yeah, warrant of arrest of alien not signed by a judge. It's not a judicial warrant. I have no obligation to oblige by that warrant.
This is a lawful warrant.
Signed by a judge?
Of the Immigration and Nationality Act, and an official designated with that authority.
That's not a warrant.
That is a warrant.
No, it's not. It's a Department of Homeland Security order.
It's a warrant.
Okay. No, it's not a warrant. It's not a warrant under the Constitution of the United States.
It's a warrant under the Immigration and Nationality Act of the United States.
Okay, that's fine, but it's not under the Constitution. You have no jurisdiction over me as a citizen. I'm the driver of this vehicle.
Okay, are you familiar with Title 8, Section 1324 of U.S. Code?
Somewhat.
Somewhat. In what regard?
I'm studying to be a Department of Justice accredited representative, so I've been through trainings.
Okay.
And I have copies of actually in this box right here, I have a copy of a real warrant and a copy of that, just so people know not to listen to that.
Joining us now, Brian McCormack, Executive Director of Columbia County Sanctuary Movement. He is...
So there's the importance of being educated and knowing what your rights are and being confident in your knowledge. And so if you are pulled over by in a traffic stop, ask the officer if he's from a local or she's from a local police department. And again, our local police is willing to identify themselves. They don't have a problem doing that. And other than your name, if it is an ICE an ICE agent, other than your name, you really do not have to provide any other information, and you can advise that you wish to remain silent and that you wish to speak with your attorney. Of course, always have your driver's license, always have your vehicle registration, proof of insurance, anything that is normally required when you're driving your vehicle. Go ahead, next. Again, if you live in Illinois, everyone is allowed to have a driver's license, so regardless of immigration status. In public spaces, ICE agents can enter public spaces. However, your presence in a public space does not give ICE authority to stop or question or arrest you. So the mere fact that they're in the public space and that you're in a shared space does not give them authorization to question you. However, if you are stopped, again, you have the right to remain silent. Remain calm. Remember that you have the right to remain silent, and communicate with the official that you would like to speak with your attorney. And that's where you come in. Is that where, do you wanted to add something?
The only person you should be giving information to is your attorney, and only if you are speaking to your attorney alone. So as we go through these materials, imagine that you have not spoken to your attorney yet, and you are preserving your rights so that you can explain your situation and have your attorney advocate for you. No debes decir información a ninguna persona de tu estatus, pero tu abogado.
So solamente con tu abogado. Okay. Next. No hay necesidad tampoco de suplirle información de en dónde uno nació, porque esa es otra de las primeras preguntas que están haciendo. Where were you born? ¿Dónde naciste? Where were you born? Immediately, where were you born? In my opinion, that really has no bearing, because I could have been born anywhere, but that doesn't mean that I'm not a citizen today, so it's irrelevant. So if you are detained, there are some key pieces of information that you should know and that you should memorize. One of them is your A number, which is a number that is assigned to you by USCIS or by the immigration services whenever you begin any type of process migratorio, proceso migratorio. Números de teléfono de personas que van a poder contestarle si en caso de que usted sea detenido. So phone numbers of people that will be able to answer in the event that you are detained, and memorize them. ¿Cuántos sabemos 5 números de teléfono de memoria? Yo quizás me sé de memoria 3. So tenemos tarea de memorizarnos números de teléfono. We have homework to memorize phone numbers. Next. No mienta, don't lie. No dé explicaciones. Don't give any explanations or excuses or stories. No hay necesidad. Jamás diga o mienta y diga que es un ciudadano cuando no lo es. Ese es un delito federal y no deberíamos de hacer eso jamás. Nunca firme un documento que no tiene conocimiento o que no entiende. Y no platique, no discuta, no hable de su estatus o de su caso migratorio con nadie, a menos que sea su abogado, y que sea con su abogado a solas. Si ha tenido alguien que ha sido detenido, if you do have someone who's been detained, you can go on locator.ice.gov and find that person's current location using their name, date of birth, and country of origin, or using their A number. So si conoce a alguien que ha sido detenido, puede localizarlo por medio de esta red de internet, locator.ice.gov, y usando el nombre, fecha de nacimiento y el país de origen, o el número A, el alien number. Fianzas sí son a veces, y quizás esta se la dejo al abogado mejor, pero fianzas sí están siendo aceptadas. Lo que pasa es que, bueno, en donde se dificulta es que se tienen que pagar al 100% las fianzas y nada más se pueden pagar nada más un ciudadano puede pagar la fianza. So maybe you can explain a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. When we hear about bonds, we might hear that all the whether we hear that about on television or in movies and saying, we're going to pay the person's bond. In the criminal justice system that is not immigration, generally people only pay 10% of the bond. So when somebody says the bond is set at $100,000, the person can pay $10,000 and be released pending the rest of their proceedings. Immigration law is different in that immigration law, somebody needs to pay 100% of the bond. So if somebody's bond is $10,000, they need to be prepared to pay those $10,000, not just those $1,000. So it's different than criminal law. Also, if somebody is paid the bond, that is temporary and should be returned to them if they show up where they're supposed to be and report in as they're supposed to. If they do not do that and follow through, they might be facing the consequences for not participating and then showing up, but also they might not get the bond returned. Si una persona está en el sistema de inmigración, tienen que pagar 100% del dinero que están preguntando para el bond. Y si las personas no van al día de la corte, que está en la cita de corte, pueden perder todo el dinero del bond que ahí pagaron. Pero si hacen todas las cosas y dan la información y van al lugar que tienen que ir para el bond, se regresa el dinero.
So hay que estar preparados. We need to prepare. Y de la manera que nos preparamos es con un plan de emergencia. Go ahead. So parte del un plan de emergencia y también practicando estas frases, ¿okay? Es bien importante que practiquemos estas frases porque no son frases que normalmente usamos. These are not phrases that we normally use, in our normal language, in our everyday vocabulary. So I wish to exercise my right to remain silent. Quiero mantenerme en silencio. I do not consent to your entry or search. No le doy permiso para que entre y revise. Please show me your warrant. Por favor, muestre la orden judicial. Am I free to leave? Am I under arrest? ¿Tengo el derecho de irme? ¿Estoy detenido? I wish to make a phone call. Quiero hacer una llamada telefónica. I will not sign any document I do not understand. No firmaré ningún documento que no entienda. And I wish to speak with my attorney or with my lawyer. Quiero hablar con mi abogado. So estas son frases que necesitamos practicar.
And how many times do somebody have to repeat it sometimes?
Muchísimas veces, over and over and over again. So el pedir que quiero mantenerme en silencio es una frase que deberíamos de aprendernos porque la vamos a tener que repetir muchas veces durante esta interacción con el oficial, porque tenemos que recordarle y mantener que sabemos nuestros derechos y uno de ellos es de mantenernos en silencio y tenemos que seguir repitiéndolo. Básicamente, tras de cualquier pregunta que nos hagan, es repetir esa frase. Tener un plan de emergencia es muy importante y creo que, this is kind of what you do in your package. So I don't know if you would like to go through this or you want me to continue. Okay. So tenga un plan en escrito. Have a written plan. Let your family members know what your plan is, what the plan is. Just like when we were children and our schools taught us tornado drills and fire drills and all of these other things, this is something that we need to put into practice also. So have a plan in writing and make sure your family knows what to do. Choose a responsible person to care for your children and for your property. Y ahí entra unos documentos que también tenemos disponibles como power of attorneys, cartas de poder, and short-term legal guardianship, tutelas de corto plazo. Have your documents ready and in a safe place. Tenga sus documentos listos y en un lugar seguro. En Centro de Información ayudamos con estos tipos de documentos y aparte de eso damos un sobre de plástico, un sobre de hule que resalta, que es uno que no se puede perder, en donde personas pueden mantener todos sus documentos en un solo lugar. Y como yo les explico a mis clientes, es que tengan ese sobre con todos los documentos que va a usar, que va a necesitar su agente o su guardián de su niño, para que no batallen, para que tengan todo accesible. So, si es una tutela, usted va a querer que su guardián tenga a la mano el nombre, el número de teléfono del doctor, del dentista, de a cuál escuela va, de la maestra, si hay alergias, las vacunas, todo eso debería de tener un guardián para poder hacer buenas decisiones de su parte para su hijo. Next.
Thank you. And these are difficult conversations. So it is easy for us to make a plan, but it is hard. It is hard to have conversations with our families, with ourselves, and say, what if something happens? Who do we contact? Who do we call? And so it is up to all of us to speak to our friends, our family, especially parents or children, and say, if this does happen, what do we do? Not that we're wishing that it happens, not that we think it even could happen, but if it does happen, what is our plan? So thankfully, many organizations and groups have put together materials. Centro de Información has materials to help individuals plan. I brought along today, and we have available through the library information from my organization, Forward Latino, but these are just examples of these documents, and that you can get them from many different places. So however you do get access to those resources, please do look into them and then use them and then have those difficult conversations. Hay muchos lugares que tienen esta información y materiales para ayudar a la gente para que hacen un plan. Puedes conseguir en muchos lugares, pero la cosa importante es teniendo esas conversaciones con tus amigos, con tus familias, con sus parientes, con sus hijos, para que saben si algo pasa, y no queremos que pasar, pero si algo pasa, ¿qué vamos a hacer en ese momento, en emergencia?
Y también es importante que un profesional sea el que les ayude con esos documentos. No el vecino, no el compadre, so somebody who is knowledgeable and somebody who does these forms and have been trained. So information to collect for household members. Name, address, place and date of birth, workplace, work information, medical history, allergies, doctors' names, phone numbers, anything that can help to make good decisions. I even recommend actually that especially for short-term legal guardianships, I'll sit with the moms and I'll say, I'm sure you have even preferences on who do you want to pick up your child from school, who are you okay with to babysit? Your guardian needs to know that. The guardian of your child needs to know that you don't want, so-and-so from down the street watching your kid. You only feel comfortable with these people. So give them that advantage. And then for your children is, things like, besides name and gender, it's their favorite toy, it's their favorite food, it's their least favorite food, allergies, immunization records, everything about their school, who's their teacher, what school do they go to, Who's their best friend? Do they have any extracurricular activities? Do they do ballet or tumbling? Or they need to know these things so that they can make good decisions for your children. So, los contactos de emergencia o los más sobresalientes serían el guardián, el abogado, el pastor de su iglesia o community, faith leader, maestros de la escuela, landlords a quién le paga la renta, doctores y las comunidades, las organizaciones de las comunidades con quien usted comparte normalmente. Documentos, ya hemos platicado sobre esto. Con respecto a cartas de poder, los documentos que deberían de ir en ese sobre que no se va a perder serían papeles sobre sus hipotecas, papeles sobre sus escrituras de propiedades, de cualquier propiedad que usted tenga, no nada más en la que viva. Vehículos, pólizas de aseguranza, cuentas bancarias, estados de cuenta. Yo hasta recomiendo, no tiene que ser el estado de cuenta más recién, pero uno por lo menos que dé el nombre del banco y el número de cuenta y el balance aproximado, para que por lo menos tenga una pista su agente cuando tenga que transactar de su parte. Información sobre sus tarjetas de crédito, tiene un balance, cuánto es el pago, cómo le hago, de dónde hago el pago. Información que se le facilite a la gente que usted va a tener como su representante. Y luego sus cuentas de retiro. So this is really important information, because if someone is detained and you have a mortgage, well, that mortgage still needs to get paid, right? So you want to make sure that your agent has the information necessary in order to continue making those payments, or to figure out where the gas is paid, where who picks up your garbage, just all of that information. Your homeowner's insurance, if you have car payments, if your cars are paid off, where are the titles? Are you going to want me to sell your car for you and send you the proceeds? So specific instructions. So every little bit of information helps. We already talked about this. We don't need to talk about this. Keep going. It's kind of old news. Okay, si usted tiene, estos son recursos. Si usted tiene una cita en la corte, estos son recursos en donde le pueden ayudar si alguien es arrestado. El Illinois Family Support Hotline, este número de teléfono acá, the 1-855-435-7693. That's a family support line that you can help find a detained person or help with legal services, as well as the Resurrection Project, and that's their QR code. Yes, please. Yes, your department.
Thank you. So before we speak about reporting incidents, we've just talked a lot about your attorney and then how to speak to an attorney. It's incredibly important to identify an attorney that you'd be comfortable working with as early as possible, because unlike in the criminal justice system, where if somebody's arrested, the state will appoint automatically an attorney to help them, a public defender. That's often not the case in immigration court. And so the best time to form a relationship with an attorney and then know who do you contact in an emergency is before anything happened. So si usted no tiene contacto con un abogado, es muy importante que buscas un abogado antes que algo pasa, para que estás preparado a quién usted vas a llamar o a quién su familia se va a llamar en esa emergencia. And there are not enough immigration attorneys to go around. Elgin has some wonderful immigration attorneys, but especially at this time, they're very busy. They have a lot of clients, a lot of appointments. So seek out an attorney so that you know that they know you, that they'll pick up the phone and that it won't be just somebody calling in an emergency. It'll say, this is my client and this is something that's terrible that's happening to them and I'm going to act immediately. This is the highest priority. Hay muchos abogados muy buenos en la área, en LGN y los otros comunidades, pero los abogados tienen muchos clientes. So es bien importante que usted vas a conectar con un abogado que va a servir del abogado de usted para que cuando llamas, ellos te conocen tu caso, te conocen tu situación y pueden ayudar más antes que no tienes que comenzar de principio con ellos.
So, establecer una relación de antemano. So if you do witness a detention or someone being detained, and you would like to help in some form or fashion, there is a way that you can help without interfering with the process, without interfering with the interaction. And the way that you can help is by recording the interaction. If it's in a public space or even on your property, you have a right to record the interaction. If you do choose to do that, the best way to do it is with your phone in landscape, not in portrait, because in landscape, you're going to capture it's going to be in the same orientation as a judge would see it later, or someone would see it in a court later, is in landscape, not portrait, okay? And always, number one is to keep your distance. So kind of the general rule is an arm's length plus a step. So an arm's length plus a step back, so that there's no confusion of your not wanting to interfere. Also, narrate what you're doing. So if an agent tells you step back, you say, I am stepping back as you're doing it. So you repeat the request, and then you indicate that you are complying. Again, because we don't want any type of interference, and we don't want anybody getting in trouble for interfering, okay? Safety really is number one.
Also, if your phone is not already in your hand, announce what you're doing. Be extremely careful, and so that you do not make any sudden movements that the officer could say that you did something aggressive or they thought you were doing something. So, si usted no tienes la cámara en su mano, tienes que decir, anunciar bien claro qué estás haciendo, que estoy agarrando mi teléfono, este es mi teléfono, estoy grabando, cosas como así, para que no pueden decir que estás haciendo algo agresivo o algo que le da una razón para el agente, para que ellos se hacen más agresivos.
Good one. Thank you. So again, don't interfere. Don't interfere. Instead, record the interaction. And we also ask that if you do record, you do not focus in on the detainee. Instead, focus on the agent and you know, the whole situation, not just zoom in on the detainee. That doesn't help the detainee. Okay. Also, do not share anything that you might record on social media, okay? Instead, that FSN number, the Family Support Network phone number, is the best place to share that information. So you'd call that phone number, and then they will give you instructions on how to make them, how to get them that video or that recording. But under no circumstances should you post it on social media. Again, here is the phone number, 1-855-435-7693. Their hotline is staffed in English, Spanish, Polish, Arabic, and Korean. I believe Chinese is also on the hotline now as well. And they're there to help. And these are some of the resources that you can reach out to. Centro de Información is the organization that I work for. The embassy pages to find your consulate, Immigration Family Resources, and then the NAI, the New American Initiative, are all resources, as well as Forward Latino. Do you want to talk about this? Sure. And point yourself out.
So there are many, and I want to thank Julia and Centro de Información for this amazing information. I want to thank also all the organizations across the state of Illinois, many of which are in Cook County, in Chicago, but many of which are here in Kane County and Lake County. And so wherever there are organizations supportive, including the organizations that created this presentation. And so if you are local, please do use the library and Centro as a resource. But if you have friends outside of the area too, let them know to reach out to the community organization near them so that they can have the information that's there. Also want to note that we are providing this information here about the person's constitutional rights and things that are always true about people's rights. But many of this information here is point in time, and things change very quickly. So if you are watching this information recorded, please follow up with other materials posted in the library, with Centro de Información, with Forward Latino, with other organizations, and learn exactly what is happening at this point in time after the recording. All this information is general information that everybody should know, because this is your rights. This is your country. This is the United States of America, and you have constitutional rights regardless of your immigration status. With that said, every situation is different. And so what we provided is not legal advice. Please do speak to an attorney so that you can tell you exactly about your situation and how that applies. Quiero dar gracias a la librería, a Centro de Información y a Forward Latino para hacer toda esta información. Esta información está grabado. Mucha de esta información es sus derechos siempre, dándolo por la Constitución de los Estados Unidos, pero cosas cambian muy rápido. So, si usted está viendo esta presentación en el futuro, por favor, mira la página de la librería, de Centro de Información y de Forward Latino para saber si cosas han cambiado y tenemos más información que es más para el momento. Si usted está en el Kane County, en el área, por favor, utilice la información aquí de Centro y de la librería. Pero si usted está en otro condado, en la ciudad de Chicago o en Lake County, hay otras organizaciones que tienen otra información y otra ayuda que está por chance más local de usted. So, hay muchas organizaciones, incluyendo toda la gente aquí que está en la presentación, y hay muchos recursos en la comunidad para ustedes.
¿Algunas preguntas? Does anybody have any questions? Yes, of course.
Absolutely. So we have a question from the audience is, are your rights the same in your vehicle, in your car, as they are in your home? And the short answer is no. Your home is your strongest protection. The law enforcement, any government agency cannot enter your home without a warrant, and they also cannot go and knock in, and get information from you. So your home is the most secure and where your rights, where you have the fullest rights. En la vivienda, en su casa, en su apartamento, tienes los derechos más fuertes, porque la policía y otros agentes del gobierno no pueden nomás tocar la puerta y pueden preguntar, hacen preguntas y no pueden entrar sin tu consent, autorización. In the case of a vehicle, we are there are much more ability of law enforcement to ask us questions about our vehicle. For example, they can ask, do you have a driver's license? You know, who are you? They can run license plates and that sort of information. They should still not be asking and taking any personal property, so they can't ask, I want to see your phone because you're driving, but they can ask you, you know, let's see some ID, are you licensed to drive? They can ask if they have suspicion to inspect the vehicle, they can ask you to get out of the vehicle, but your rights still apply very similarly as in when you're at home. So you still have the right to remain silent. You don't have to give any information. You can say, I do not want to give information. I do not consent to this search. And that is very, very strong, but not quite as strong as it is in your housing. So, si usted está manejando o está en un carro, otro lugar en público, hay más cosas que la policía y los agentes del gobierno pueden preguntar. Pueden preguntar si usted tiene una licencia para manejar y también pueden preguntar, inspectar el carro y preguntar que si usted se baja del carro para si ellos tienen sospeción que algo está pasando ahí. Pero todavía tienes esos derechos para mantener silencio, tienes los derechos para decir que no autorizas para ellos buscando en el carro. Other questions? Yes. Yes.
I can imagine most people would be very intimidated if that started happening to them. So I'm just wondering, like, what exactly are you supposed to do if you're, I mean, if you're in your car, they can say, let me see your license. That man was just trying to get the guy out of the car using a warrant or something. I'm just curious, like, what is the procedure there to do?
Absolutely. So the question is, if the gentleman that we saw in the video that we saw in the clip in the news, he was an expert. He had studied and he had known what to say, and you saw how difficult it is. So what should somebody do and say in terms of that? And so I'll pass it to my colleague, but if you could also mention what is a representative and what role do they play in the system?
So of course we don't expect people that are not that as educated as this gentleman to be able to come up with all of the lingo that he came up with. However, when we know better, we do better, right? So when we educate ourselves, we're even that much, you know, smarter or more knowledgeable, right? And so if you know what a warrant is supposed to look like, and that's not signed by a judge, then that's what you say. That's not signed by a judge. That is not a judicial warrant. A judicial warrant is supposed to be signed by a judge and dated, and it's supposed to have a specific name on it. And this does not have that. Well, code such and such and blah, 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 blah. Well, that might be, but it's not a judicial warrant. You can tell me all the codes you want to tell me, but it's not a judicial warrant because I don't see a judge's signature on there. But they also identify themselves as local police. And so if you ask them, are you a Belgian police officer? And they're going to say, yes, I am. And here's, well, can I see your badge number? Yes, they're very willing to provide that information. And so if you know that that's Belgian police and you feel comfortable with that exchange then you cooperate as you would normally, exactly. So I think the first thing is to identify that it's not an ICE agent. Just to go back to the previous question too about the Department of Justice accredited representative. So that is a designation that was created because of the lack of immigration attorneys, or the low number, the low volume, the lack of immigration attorneys. The Department of Justice came out with a program where there are Department of Justice accredited representatives that are allowed and have studied and have gone through a process to learn immigration law and can has the authorization, the accreditation to file applications, to fill out applications, and to provide immigration advice. So I hope that helps.
And in terms of when you're interacting with law enforcement, whether it's local police or ICE or other federal agents, don't rely on what they tell you is what the law is. Even the Supreme Court has said that the police are allowed to lie or tell half-truths and say, oh, you have to do this. So know your rights ahead of time, and then know that you have the right to remain silent, that you don't have to cooperate. If they read you a statute and say, code so-and-so and so of the United States Code, did you know that it requires you to do this? You say, I'm exercising my right to remain silent. You do not need to acknowledge that. In fact, if you do say, yes, I'm familiar with that, they could make a case in court to say that whatever you were doing was willful, that you knew what the law was and you were doing something contrary to the law. Not that that necessarily would happen, but anything that you can say within the presence of law enforcement that is not privileged, meaning that it is not that conversation with your attorney that's protected by the attorney-client privilege, that can be used against you in a court of law, because the most important evidence in law is what did the person say with their own words. And if the person is law enforcement, has a videotape of it or so-and-so, they can show that and say, look, this person said this. So exercise your rights and do not rely on an agent telling you, well, this is the law and this is what you have to do. Do not engage in the process. Si usted está en una situación que la policía, una agente de inmigración te está explicando que esta es la ley y que usted tiene que hacer esto, y si usted sabe que esta es la ley y tienes que hacer eso, nomás dices que estoy guardando mi derecho de silencio, que no voy a hablar, que estoy guardando mi derecho de silencio.
Can you show the warrant again, please? So the question is, how do we know that a judge actually signed the warrant? Can you go to the next one first, I think? That it was, that it's not forged? That it's not a fraudulent signature on this line? Okay, can you go back? Okay, so the judicial warrant is the one on the right there. Is it? Okay, there it is. So the judicial warrant is this one. So it's going to have the title, the United States District Court. That's important. Okay, and as you go down, it's going to have the section for the name of the actual person that is being sought or that the warrant is looking for, is made out to. So that section right there is where the name is gonna be all printed out. So if they're looking for Julia Perez, that's where my name would be. Okay, it's gonna have the case number, and then as you go down, all the way down, very down to the date, it's gonna be dated. Yep, it's gonna be dated. And typically these dates are 30 days old, not longer than 30 days typically. And then there's going to be a judge's actual signature. The administrative warrant is typically it's from the U.S. Department of Justice, and it's a document. Or you're better at this than I am, but it's a document that is for it expedites like deportation or removal. It's not an arrest. It's not what that other one is. It's not an arrest warrant. It has a different function. What we were finding and what we have heard is that there were some ICE agents that had detained people in the back seat of their cars while they were physically filling out the form in the front seat of the car, like after they already had the person inside the car. And this is where you just have to have a really good eye. Tienes que tener los ojos bien abiertos. Debe de tener una firma de un juez. Debe de tener una fecha de no más de 30 días. Si esa orden judicial tiene la fecha de octubre del 2024, that's not good anymore. Ya no es válida. Ya está expirada. So hay detalles en este documento que hay que uno fijarse, que esté deletreado bien el nombre, that our names are spelled correctly.
I think that was an excellent explanation of these two forms. And then the thing to keep in mind in terms of these forms is that the form on the left, that judicial warrant, that doesn't just represent a judge's signature. It doesn't just say that they went to a court instead of doing it on their own. It means that they showed proof to the judge. They said, this is the reason, these are the facts as we know it, so that we can take away somebody's liberty, so that we can go into somebody's home, so that we can ask them more questions, or potentially even arrest that person where they are, because they show the judge that proof. And judges do not take that lightly. That means that something happened there. Una orden de la corte significa que la agencia fueron a un juez independiente, y el juez vio pruebas que sí es por chance más, la chance es más hay más razón para ir y para entrar la casa, la vivienda de una persona, para arrestar a una persona y para hacer más cosas. En el derecho aquí, nomás es un papel que la agencia, ellos mismos lo completaron. So ya saben lo que quieren hacer y no tienen que hacer más prueba para tener para eso, este formulario no tiene la protección que tiene del juez. That is why this one here does not have as much protection, and it is made by the agency themselves, and they already know what they want to do and why they want to say it. And so it's just paperwork. There's not much proof behind it, versus a judge has an independent review of whatever is alleged, and that they can really go further with that judicial warrant.
Okay, para saber que te estoy entendiendo bien. So, la orden judicial, el oficial que está arrestando, el oficial fue ante un juez, mostró pruebas y justificación para pedirle permiso básicamente al juez o autorización al juez que me dejen entrar a esa casa a arrestar a esa persona. El juez revisó esos documentos y esas pruebas, y al firmar ese documento dijo, ok, tú me has mostrado suficientes pruebas para justificar la entrada a esa casa. Yes? Okay. Okay. ¿Preguntas? Any additional questions? So la pregunta es, the question is have we heard or do we know if ICE agents have fraudulently signed judicial warrants, acting or passing as if they were judges' signatures? Not to my knowledge. That would be very blatant in my opinion. That would be really bad. That's fraudulent and yeah.
So we have three parts of government in the United States. We have the executive branch, we have got the judicial branch, and the legislative branch. This is all the executive branch, and they're doing the arrests and they're carrying it out. If there is proof, and community organizations, attorneys, individuals themselves can go to court and say, look, they forged the signature, that would be a huge, huge problem and a big embarrassment to that. And that would be not only just throw away that case, but it would actually put into question all the other cases that agent, perhaps even that entire office, would do it. So it is something that we should be on the lookout for, and it's important for us to recognize that, so that if it is happening, which it could be, it's not out of the question, we can say, look, this was questionable, and so this entire series of arrests by this agent, you need to review that and say that those people's rights probably were violated if they're doing this long scale. Would you like to share that in Spanish?
Si alguien firmara, si un agente firmara una orden judicial cometiendo fraude, firmándolo como si fuera un juez, eso abriría un caso y la sospecha de que cuántas veces lo ha hecho y pues una vergüenza en realidad para el departamento que está manejando esto de inmigración y de las detenciones y de la ley del departamento ejecutivo del gobierno. Aparte se pondría en sospecha todos los casos que ese agente ha procesado y todos los arrestos que ese agente ha procesado. So, sería un problema enorme si cometieran fraude de ese tipo. Es posible que sí esté pasando, no lo hemos captado todavía, pero deberíamos de mantenernos también vigilantes sobre si eso sí pasa y definitivamente reportarlo si está pasando. The reason behind that is because it could hinder and it could, pardon me? Ay, perdón. Why do we recommend you not posting any kind of detention videos directly on Facebook or on social media? That is because it could hurt the detainee's case by posting it directly to social media. Plus, we try to maintain the privacy of those people detained. So in order to be respectful of them, again, we don't know what their immigration status is, right? And so potentially posting a video on social media showing that this person has been detained and is in the process of being detained could damage that person's reputation. It could be defamatory, in my opinion, because if I'm getting arrested or if I'm getting detained, you don't know what my status is. And so there can be a broad assumption that I am undocumented when in reality I'm not. And also it could hurt my case if for some reason I make a sudden move, it could be seen as an aggressive move where it might not be. To where if you share that directly with the Family Services Network, with the hotline, they can decipher how and when and if to use that video in the defense of that detainee. Okay, so what the latest information and how it's been processed is detainee is taken to a detention center. They do not have their telephone. They're not given their phone. They don't have access to their phone. They are entered into a system with their A number and their information. Again, that locator, remember that locator website that I gave earlier? That typically can take 2 to 3 days for that information to get put into the system. With the government shutdown, it was taking even much longer. It was taking 7 to 10 days for detainees' information to be put into the locator system. So that was a big problem. While in detention, they are asked, many times they're asked, do you want to just deport? Do you want to just sign this document and just go? If you sign this, we'll give you a flight, we'll maybe give you $1,000 and you can just go. And so there's questioning that happens, a lot of questioning that happens, that detainee needs to continuously repeat, I wish to remain silent, I wish to remain silent. Unfortunately, it can take longer than what we would hope for detainees to be given the right to make that phone call. The phone call that they make is going to most likely, unless they memorize their attorney's phone number, and they have a relationship with their attorney, an already established relationship with their attorney, many times that detainee needs to call a family member to let them know what has happened and to give them the information of, okay, you need to contact the attorney, you need to, figure this out. And then the attorney will go to where the detention center and begin the process. In many cases, yes, and in many cases we have seen that even when it's a citizen that's been detained, if that citizen does not have on them proof of their status, they can potentially be taken to a detention center until their family member can produce the proof of citizenship. So in many cases it could be, I'm calling my daughter and asking my daughter, please go to the house and grab my passport and bring my passport. That could maybe take a day. I mean, it's not going to be an immediate fix, right? An immediate response. And then, and what happens if I just never got my passport? I'm a naturalized citizen, and I'm not going to travel, so I didn't get my passport. Well, now my daughter has to look for my naturalization certificate in that file folder that I forgot which file it's in. It feels like, and you can correct me, but it feels like the burden of proof is on us to prove our status. Not the burden of proof is not on them to figure out whether we're citizens or not, or of legal status. Is that right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's very unfortunate. And so people have a decision to make. As the law is that you are not required to carry your documentation with you if you're a U.S. citizen. You're also not required to carry around documentation with you if you're a naturalized citizen even. The only people who are required by law to carry around documentation of themselves is that if they have a visa, or if they have some other kind of temporary status, or if they're a legal permanent resident in the United States. And the laws can be complicated, so people should talk to an attorney or get more information specific to their status to see, okay, I do have to carry around this card or something else like that with me. Unfortunately, if somebody is arrested, we have seen that they are picking up people and then asking questions later, which they should not be doing. And there are lawsuits and there are organizations that are fighting this to say that there is racial profiling, that there is violations of due process, and they're picking individuals up. But it is shorter and it is faster if somebody can prove that they're a U.S. citizen. That way that there is no question that the person would have to get let go. So everyone has to make their own decision to say if they want to carry their passport with them. That is their option. That is not their legal requirement, but it is their option. Other questions? Yes.
Sorry, I have a 5-part question.
Sure. Sure.
It's all about attorney. So in immigration cases, you don't get a court-appointed attorney, right? You have to find your own.
Yeah, so the question is, in a civil immigration proceeding, does the person does the person have a right to an attorney? And no, they do not have a right to an attorney as it would be if they're arrested for a criminal matter.
So question 2. For an attorney to identify you as a client, obviously you're going to have one already, but it has to be on retainer. Is that how that works? And how do you, I've never gone.
Of course, not necessarily. So every attorney is different and every law office is different. Just like if somebody is in the medical system and somebody needs to go to the doctor, it's always helpful to find a doctor before you're sick to go talk to that doctor and form that relationship. Of course, unfortunately, there's no insurance for attorneys, and attorneys can be expensive. but it works the same way where if somebody's meeting with an attorney and they can describe, okay, I'm undocumented, or I have concerns about my status, or I have concerns about my parents' status, or something like that. That attorney, by speaking to them, you have a right to for confidentiality with them. You've already formed what's called attorney-client privilege, and that's the great time to ask them to say, "This is great. If the worst happens, can I just call you? What information does your staff need?" And then they'll have you in the system so that when your name comes up and then they find you, they'll know that you're a client because you've formed that attorney-client, that privilege. Of course, that is no guarantee that the attorney can take your case to say that, I'm actually booked, or maybe they might have a hearing that day, or they might be on a vacation. So it is also a good idea to speak to maybe 2 attorneys and law offices and be familiar with them and know their processes. Yeah, so that is an excellent point. So if somebody speaks to an attorney, that attorney could say, I'm sorry, but I'm not able to take your case because for whatever reason, you have perhaps encountered the system before, you've been deported before, and no matter what we try to defend you, unfortunately it looks like removal would be likely. That attorney could say that and give you that information. You can speak to another attorney as well too to see, okay, realistically, what are my options here too? And it's incredibly important to know that situation so that you're not paying just for that chance that they can do something when they're honest with you. So it is a very good thing when your attorney's telling you, this is what I can and cannot do it, and so that we do not waste your money or your time or resources. I think we can pause there because those were great questions, and then maybe translate them to Spanish, and then we could take the rest of the questions.
So es importante establecer una relación con abogados de antemano. Es posible que, número uno es bueno entender que en el lado criminal este país nos ofrece un abogado que ellos nos apuntan, nos traen o nos registran con ese abogado. Pero ese no es el caso con casos de inmigración. Con casos de inmigración, el gobierno no nos provee un abogado automáticamente, sino que nosotros mismos tenemos que retener un abogado y establecer una relación con un abogado de antemano. Alguien que ojalá esté disponible en caso de que seamos detenidos y tengamos que acudir a ellos.
We can take one more question in the next 2 minutes. Any final questions? Yes.
So at Centro de Información, we currently do not have attorneys on staff. We are hiring attorneys, but we do not currently have attorneys on staff. But we do also have part of those relationships and partnerships that we have are legal clinics where attorneys from the area are conducting legal clinics, I believe in Hanover Park as well as in Palatine, twice a month, or twice a week, I'm sorry, to provide consultations and provide potential areas of relief. And if you need that information, we're happy to provide that information for the legal clinics.
much of this information will be on the library's website, so we encourage you to keep visiting the library's website. And for the most up-to-date information, all of this information, including much more. And again, things change so quickly, so please look into the latest information. Keep an eye on Centro de Información's websites and the libraries, and also Forward Latino, as you get that information. And I want to thank you, everybody who visited us in person, and everybody who joined us online, and everybody who is going to be visiting in the future. We are so happy that you were able to join us, and please feel free to contact us, and please share this presentation with your networks. And there are many other community presentations available as well. So if you'd like to attend something in person in the future or virtually live, many of those are going to be ongoing. So please keep an eye on Centro's website. Thank you.